No one planned to save her. Not the fleet that retreated hours ago. Not the commanders who marked her position as lost. Not the galaxy that had already moved on. But one human hadn't. The alien warrior lay half buried in blackened soil, her massive frame twisted at an unnatural angle. Smoke drifted across the battlefield in slow waves, carrying the smell of burnt metal and ionized air. Her exo-armor, once polished and proud, was cracked open like a broken shell. Lights flickered weakly along her spine, each pulse slower than the last. She was paralyzed. Every command she sent through her neural link died halfway, like a scream swallowed by space. Her legs were unresponsive. Her arms were heavy, numb things that no longer felt like her own. Pain existed only as distant static now, fading into something colder. She had fought for 3 decades across star systems that humans still struggled to pronounce. She had stood against war beasts the size of buildings. She had never retreated. And now she was alone. Above her, the sky burned red where orbital strikes had scarred the clouds. Distant explosions rolled like thunder, but they were moving farther away. The battle was ending. Without her. Her people had withdrawn. Strategically correct. Logically perfect. A paralyzed warrior was a liability. Rescue would cost lives, ships, resources. She understood that. Understanding did not make it hurt less. Her optics dimmed as her power core dipped into emergency reserve. Minutes left. Maybe less. Soon her armor would shut down completely, sealing her inside like a coffin. She tilted her head just enough to watch the horizon. That was when she saw movement. At first, she assumed it was a malfunction. A hallucination from failing systems. The shape was wrong, unsteady, limping, uneven. It moved through wreckage instead of around it. Human. A single human soldier staggered across the ruined field, dragging one leg slightly, rifle slung uselessly across his back. His armor was scorched and mismatched, patched with plates that didn't belong together. One shoulder piece was missing entirely. His helmet visor was cracked, taped together with something that looked suspiciously non-military. He stopped. She knew the exact moment he saw her. Humans had terrible control over their body language. His entire posture changed, spine straightening, breath catching, hands tightening. His visor turned fully toward her position. He stood there for a long second. Then the human broke into a run. Alarm signals screamed in her neural net. Not danger, confusion. No human came back for enemies. Especially not paralyzed ones. Especially not after a retreat order. He skidded to a halt beside her, boots sinking into the mud. Up close, he looked worse. Blood streaked down the side of his neck. His breathing was fast and uneven. "Well," he said, voice rough but oddly calm, "that's not good." She tried to lift her weapon. Nothing happened. The human noticed immediately. "Hey, easy. Don't try that," he said, raising his hand slowly. "I'm not here to finish you off." Her optics narrowed slightly, the closest she could manage to a glare. He laughed under his breath. "Yeah, fair look. I'd be suspicious too." He crouched beside her, ignoring the distant booms of artillery. His visor scanned her armor, numbers and warnings flashing across his display. "Oh, wow," he muttered. "That's a lot of damage." Her vocal unit sparked weakly. Static escaped instead of words. "Yeah, I figured," he said gently. "You're stuck, aren't you?" She hated that he sounded sorry. He reached out, then hesitated, pulling his hand back like he was afraid she'd bite him. "I'm going to touch your armor, okay? Just checking." He didn't wait for permission. His fingers brushed the cracked plating near her shoulder. The contact sent a dull vibration through her frame. Not painful. Just real. "Power failure," he murmured. "Neural lock. Mobility shot." He leaned back on his heels and exhaled slowly. "They marked this whole zone as cleared," he said. "Which means they're not coming back." She already knew that. He looked at her again, really looked this time. Not at the weapon mounts or the insignia. At her face, half visible through the shattered helm. Name, he asked. She forced energy into her translator. One word scraped through. Kalith. His lips curved into a tired smile. Kalith. I'm Jonah. He glanced over his shoulder toward the horizon, where human ships had vanished hours earlier. Then he looked down at her broken form. Well, he said quietly, this is where I'm supposed to walk away. Her optics flickered. Instead, Jonah stood. He keyed his comm unit. Static answered. He tried again. Nothing. Of course, he muttered. Because why would today get easier? He turned back to her, decision already settling into his posture. Humans did that. Once they chose, they moved fast. Okay, he said. Here's the situation. You can't move. I'm not exactly in great shape myself. And if the patrol drones sweep back through here, we're both dead. He paused. But I don't like the idea of leaving you here. Her systems struggled to process that sentence. He reached down and unclipped his rifle, setting it on the ground. Then he did something completely insane. He deactivated his targeting systems. A clear sign of non-hostile intent. A stupid one. She tried to warn him. Another burst of static escaped her speakers. Yeah, I know, he said softly. Bad idea. I get that a lot. He crouched lower, sliding one arm beneath her shoulders, the other beneath her torso. Her armor protested with sharp warning tones. Don't panic, he said quickly. I'm not lifting you yet. Just testing. Testing. No human should have been able to lift her. She weighed more than a light ground vehicle. He grunted as he tried, muscles straining, boots slipping. For a moment she thought he would give up. Instead, he adjusted his grip. Okay, he muttered. New plan. He reached into a pouch on his belt and pulled out a compact power tether. Emergency equipment. Not meant for this. He anchored one end to his own armor, the other to her exosuit's exposed frame. Ride or die, her, he said with a crooked grin. Then he activated the tether. The surge jolted both of them. Her systems flared, power momentarily stabilizing. His armor servos screamed in protest. Slowly, painfully, Jonah hauled her upright. Mud tore free from her armor with a wet sound. Her feet dragged uselessly, carving lines through the soil. He staggered under her weight, nearly collapsing. Okay, he panted. You are way heavier than you look. She would have laughed if she could. Step by step, he began to move. Each explosion in the distance made him flinch, but he didn't stop. Sweat dripped down his face inside the helmet. His breathing grew ragged. Don't get any ideas, he said between breaths. If you're planning to stab me later, at least wait until I've had a shower. Her optics stayed fixed on him. On the human who had just broken every rule of war. On the only being in the galaxy who had decided she was still worth saving. And for the first time since the battle began, Kalith did not feel alone. Jonah dragged Kalith through the ruins like he was pulling a starship with a rope. The power tether screamed every few steps, flashing warnings across both of their displays. Jonah's armor servos were never designed for this kind of load. His knee joints stuttered. His back plate thumped with each breath, struggling to keep pressure balanced. Kalith's own systems flickered in and out of stability. The tether fed her just enough energy to keep her suit awake, but not enough to restore movement. She remained trapped inside her body, aware, furious, and forced to trust a stranger. A human stranger. The battlefield grew quieter the farther they went. The heavy artillery was now a low rumble behind them, like distant thunder fading into the night. Here, the only sounds were Jonah's boots, the scrape of Kalith's armor against debris, and the soft crackle of burning wreckage. Every few moments, Jonah glanced upward, scanning the sky. They'll send drones, he muttered. They always do. Kalith's translator caught the word drones and pushed it through her failing audio. A faint hiss followed, then a single distorted sentence. Leave me. Jonah froze. For a second, his breathing stopped, like the words had hit him physically. He turned his cracked visor toward her face. No, he said. He didn't say it loudly. He didn't argue. He didn't explain. Just, no. Then he started moving again. Kalitha's optics narrowed. Her instincts screamed at her to fight, to reject, to control something, anything, but she had no hands to clench, no legs to push, no blade to raise. She had only her mind, and it was surrounded by failure warnings. Jonah's voice came again, softer this time. I know why you said that, he said. I've been the guy left behind before. Different war. Same logic. Kalith watched him limp forward, dragging her through ash like he was dragging his own guilt. There's a moment, Jonah continued, when you realize the radio is quiet on purpose. Not because they can't hear you. Because they decided not to. He swallowed hard, then forced out a tired laugh that sounded more like pain than humor. Yeah. I don't handle that well. Kalith tried to respond, but her throat unit failed again. Ahead, broken terrain rose into a jagged ridge. Beyond it, the ground dipped into a narrow valley filled with twisted metal and half-buried machines. A graveyard for tanks and alien walkers. It smelled like melted circuitry and scorched oil. Jonah slowed as they approached the ridge. He crouched behind a chunk of shattered plating, pulling Kalith into cover. Her armor scraped loudly, and Jonah winced. Okay, he whispered. We rest here. Quick. He popped open a small panel on his forearm and checked his map. It blinked with weak signal. The retreat routes were marked in blue. Their location was a red, deep inside the zone everyone had abandoned. Jonah stared at it like it was insulting him. They're going to mark this whole region for cleansing, he whispered. Standard practice. Drones sweep. Anything alive gets deleted. Clean war. No witnesses. Kalith understood that phrase. No witnesses. She had seen it done by her own people, too. Jonah looked down at her cracked armor. His gaze landed on the broken seam near her spine, where sparking cables hung loose like exposed veins. You're losing power, he said. Kalitha's optics blinked once. Jonah nodded like he understood the language of blinking, like he'd been talking to aliens his whole life. Okay, he said. I've got to stabilize you. If your suit fully shuts down, you're done. He dug into his belt pack and pulled out a small cylinder, human field battery. Kalitha's systems immediately screamed warnings. Wrong voltage. Wrong connection type. Unstable current. Jonah noticed the flashing alerts. Yeah, he muttered. I see the angry red symbols. Look, we don't have time to be picky. He pulled out a multi-tool, snapped it open, and began cutting into his own battery casing. Kalitha's optics widened slightly. He was dismantling his last power source. Without it, his armor would die. His temperature control, targeting systems, mobility assist, all gone. You are insane, Kalith managed to force through her translator, the words scraping out like gravel. Jonah looked up, startled, then grinned despite everything. Oh, good, he said. Your voice works. That's comforting. And yeah, I get that a lot. He returned to the battery, fingers moving fast. Not polished, not perfect, but clever. He stripped wires, twisted them together, then hesitated. Okay, he whispered. How do I do this without exploding us? Kalith watched him. Humans were famously reckless. That was the galaxy's joke. Too emotional. Too impulsive. Too fragile to matter in real wars. But Jonah wasn't acting like a fool. He was thinking like a human. Improvising. He glanced around, eyes landing on a wrecked alien drone half buried in dirt. Its plating was peeled open, power core shattered, but its connector ports were intact. Jonah crawled to it, ignoring the sparks and sharp edges. He yanked a component free, nearly cutting his glove. Oh, yeah, okay, he hissed. Still alive. Great sign. He returned with the salvaged alien connector, holding it up like a trophy. See, he whispered to Kalith. Recycling. Earth approved. Kalith almost didn't believe what she was seeing. A human soldier, barely trained by her species standards, was adapting alien technology on the fly in the middle of a battlefield. Jonah spliced the connector into his battery lines. He wrapped the whole mess with a strip of thermal tape and slapped it into the exposed port on Kalitha's armor. For one terrifying second, Kalitha's entire suit went dark. Then her internal lights flared back to life. Power stabilized at a low but steady level. Her warning signals calmed. Not gone, but quieter. Jonah sagged with relief, shoulders dropping. He pressed his forehead briefly against her armor like a man thanking a machine for not killing him. "Okay," he breathed. "You're not dying on my watch." Kalith stared at him, mind racing. "Why?" she asked, voice still rough. Jonah didn't answer immediately. He glanced at the sky again, scanning for movement. Then he looked back at her. "Because someone has to be better than the rules," he said. Kalitha's optics tightened. Rules mattered. Orders mattered. Discipline was survival. Yet, here she was, alive because someone had ignored them. A sudden high-pitched whine cut through the air. Jonah snapped his head up. Kalitha's audio sensors sharpened. Drone engines. Jonah's face stiffened. He grabbed his rifle from the mud, then immediately realized the problem. A rifle was useless against a sweep drone. Sweep drones weren't meant to fight soldiers. They were meant to erase leftovers. They floated above the ground like silent predators. Fast. Armored. Equipped with thermal scanners and clean laser cutters. You didn't shoot them. You hid. Jonah grabbed Kalitha's tether and yanked her deeper behind cover, pressing his body against the wreckage beside her. "Don't move," he whispered. Kalith couldn't move even if she wanted to. The drone's whine grew louder. A shadow passed over the ridge. Then the drone appeared, smooth black plating, 3 glowing sensor eyes, a bellow-mounted cutter that hummed with surgical calm. It drifted slowly, scanning the valley. Searching for heat. Searching for life. Jonah held his breath. Kalitha's armor was still warm. Even at low power, she was a beacon. The drone's eyes flickered. It angled slightly toward them. Jonah's jaw tightened. Kalith felt it then, his fear, not loud, not panicked, but sharp and focused. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. Not a grenade. Not a weapon. A cheap, metal coin. Kalith didn't understand. Jonah's lips moved silently, counting. Then, fast as lightning, he flicked the coin into the open valley. It bounced off metal with a sharp clink 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 and rolled into shadow. The drone reacted instantly. Its eyes snapped toward the sound. It drifted away from them, scanning the new direction. Jonah didn't move. Kalith watched, stunned. A coin. A tiny piece of useless metal. And yet it had tricked a machine built by advanced civilizations. The drone hovered above the coin's final resting spot. Its cutter lowered, humming. Then it fired, clean laser slicing through the wreckage where the coin had fallen, searching for heat signatures that weren't there. It found nothing. The drone paused. Its sensors pulsed again. Then, slowly, it drifted onward. Back toward the ridge. Away. Jonah exhaled so quietly it barely made a sound. Kalith stared at him like he was something new. "You tricked it," she whispered. Jonah's grin was small and exhausted. "Yeah," he said. "Machines are predictable. People aren't. That's kind of our thing." Kalitha's mind snapped into place around a terrifying realization. Humans didn't win because they had better weapons. They won because they looked at problems differently. The drone's sound faded. Jonah's smile disappeared. His eyes turned serious. "That was one," he whispered. "They never send just one." Kalitha's suit pinged softly as her long-range sensor picked up fresh signals. Multiple contacts. Incoming. A whole sweep line. Jonah stared at the horizon, where tiny lights floated like stars moving toward them. Then he looked down at Kalith, and his voice lowered into something dangerous. "Okay," he said. "Now we stop running." He tightened the tether around his waist. "I don't know what you were before this," he said, "but right now you're my responsibility." Kalitha's optics brightened faintly. The valley filled with the distant hum of approaching machines. And Jonah began to prepare. Not with alien tactics. Not with military doctrine. With human creativity. The valley went quiet in the way only machines could make it quiet. No shouting. No battle cries. Just the low, steady hum of approaching drones, layered over each other like a mechanical storm. Kalitha's sensors finally stabilized enough to paint a weak tactical picture. 5 sweep drones in a loose line, spreading out, methodical and patient. They were not rushing. They never rushed. Time was on their side. Jonah crouched beside her, fingers moving fast. He pulled apart scraps of wreckage, stacking them into shapes that made no sense at first. Metal plates leaned at odd angles, wires stretched across shallow pits, broken power cells placed where no soldier would ever put them. Kalith watched, confused. "What are you doing?" she asked. Jonah didn't look at her. "Lying," he said. "To the battlefield." That didn't help. He worked with urgency, but not panic. Every motion was deliberate. He ripped open a heat sink from a destroyed vehicle and wedged it into the mud, cracking it so residual warmth leaked out slowly. "Machines don't see like we do," he muttered. "They see patterns. Temperatures. Probabilities." He dragged a piece of burning debris closer to the false heat source, then smeared coolant across the ground near their hiding place, chilling the soil around Kalitha's armor. Her suit protested, but the external temperature dropped fast. Jonah leaned close. "I'm making you invisible." The drones crested the ridge. They floated into the valley with perfect spacing, their sensor eyes glowing softly as they scanned. One paused, tilting its body slightly as it processed conflicting data. Heat, over there. Movement, maybe. Life signs, unclear. Jonah pressed himself flat against the wreckage. His breathing slowed until it was barely there. Kalith felt something shift inside her. Not fear. Focus. She rerouted power manually, sacrificing non-essential systems, visual enhancement, threat prediction, external signal boosts, to strengthen her passive sensor dampening. It was an old trick, something veterans learned after too many ambushes. "Jonah," she whispered, "link your suit to mine." He blinked. "I don't speak alien wizard." "Do it," she said. "Trust me." Jonah hesitated for exactly 1 second, then plugged his suit tether into her armor's auxiliary port. The connection sent a jolt through both of them. Kalith felt his presence in her system, crude, inefficient, but powerful in its own way. Human tech wasn't elegant. It was stubborn. She redirected the shared power flow, syncing their thermal signatures. Jonah's body heat vanished from the drone sensors. To the machines, they were one cold, broken object. The nearest drone drifted closer, hovering directly above the false heat source Jonah had set. Its cutter arm extended. Jonah tensed. Kalitha's systems tracked the timing, the angle, the hesitation. She knew these drones. She had fought them before, efficient, predictable, deadly. The cutter fired. It sliced cleanly through the decoy wreckage, vaporizing metal and mud in a bright line of energy. Nothing screamed. Nothing moved. The drone paused. Jonah squeezed his eyes shut. Kalith held her system steady. The drone's sensors recalibrated. Error probability increased. Target confidence decreased. One by one, the drones adjusted their formation, drifting past the false signature and deeper into the valley. They were leaving. Jonah let out a breath that shook his entire body. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Jonah laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. "That actually worked," he whispered. Kalith felt something unfamiliar warm her core. Pride. Not in herself. In him. Before she could respond, her long-range sensor pulsed again. New data flooded in. Not drones. Something worse. "Jonah," she said, voice sharper now, "you need to move." He followed her gaze. At the far end of the valley, something large shifted. Not floating. Walking. Heavy footsteps cracked the ground as an armored alien war unit emerged from behind a collapsed transport. Its silhouette was massive, thick plating, shoulder-mounted cannons, eyes glowing with command-grade intelligence. A hunter unit. Unlike drones, hunter units were piloted. They thought. Jonah swallowed. That's not a drone. No, Kalith said quietly. That is an executioner. The hunter unit paused, scanning the valley. Its sensors were broader, more adaptive. It didn't rely on one data stream. It relied on instinct. And it was very good at its job. Jonah's hand tightened around his rifle, though he knew it was useless. We can't hide from that, he said. No, Kalith agreed. But we can mislead it. Jonah looked at her. You've got an idea. She shifted power again, this time forcing a controlled spike through her damaged systems. Her armor lights flared briefly, just enough to be seen. The hunter unit reacted instantly. Its head snapped toward them. Jonah stared at her. What did you just do? Bought us attention, she said. Now listen carefully. She began feeding him instructions, simple ones, stripped of military jargon. Where to move. What to trigger. When to run. Jonah didn't question her. He moved. As the hunter unit advanced, Jonah broke cover, sprinting toward a cluster of wreckage. He fired wildly, not to hit, but to provoke. The executioner roared, cannons powering up. It fired. The blast missed Jonah by meters, slamming into the ground and throwing him forward. He rolled, came up coughing, armor screaming warnings. Still alive, he shouted. Kalith rerouted her remaining power to one system she hadn't used yet. Her armor's emergency broadcast. She sent a signal, not a distress call, not a location ping. A challenge code. Ancient. Traditional. Warrior to warrior. The hunter unit hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second. That was enough. Jonah reached the wreckage Kalith had marked earlier. He slammed his boot down on the exposed panel she'd identified. The ground exploded. Not upward. Inward. The wreckage collapsed into a hidden maintenance trench beneath it, dragging the hunter unit's leg down with it. The massive machine stumbled, one limb trapped, balance thrown off. It roared again, this time in anger. Jonah didn't stop moving. He ran back toward Kalith, yanking the tether tight. Please tell me that thing can't get up fast, he panted. Kalith watched the executioner struggle, its heavy frame sinking deeper into the trench. It will get out, she said. But not quickly. Jonah nodded. Good enough. He hauled her forward, muscles screaming, armor failing in chunks now. His mobility assist died completely. Every step was pure human effort. Behind them, the hunter unit tore free with a metallic shriek. It turned toward them, weapons charging. Kalith felt something unlock. A final reserve. She focused everything she had left into one last system. Her armor's manual override. Her right arm twitched. Then moved. Just a little. Jonah felt it through the tether. He looked down at her in shock. You moved, he breathed. Kalith's fingers curled. Not fully. But enough. Jonah, she said, voice steady despite the pain flooding back, set me down. He hesitated. Now, she said. He did. She planted her armored hand into the mud, stabilizing herself. Power surged through her frame, sparks flying as systems fought against damage and failure. The hunter unit raised its cannons. Kalith raised her arm. Barely. Human, she said, optics blazing, thank you. Then she fired. Not a weapon. A pulse. A raw, unstable discharge of everything her suit had left. The blast ripped through the air, slamming into the hunter unit's chest. Its shields flared, overloaded, and collapsed in a shower of light. The machine staggered. Jonah stared, breathless. Kalith's arm fell limp again. She was paralyzed once more. But the executioner was damaged. And for the first time since the battle began, the enemy was retreating. Jonah knelt beside her, shaking with exhaustion and awe. You did that, he whispered. Kalith's optics dimmed slightly, but her voice remained strong. We did. Above them, the sky rumbled again. But this time, The sound wasn't hostile. It was human engines returning. And somewhere far above the battlefield, the galaxy began to notice that humans didn't follow the rules. The sound in the sky grew louder. Not the sharp scream of alien strike craft. Not the cold hum of drones. These engines roared. Human engines. Jonah looked up first, eyes wide, disbelief flashing across his face. "No way," he whispered. "They came back." Kalitha's sensors caught the signatures moments later. 3 human dropships cutting through the cloud cover, scarred and mismatched, running hot and fast. Not an official fleet response. Not command-sanctioned. Volunteers. People who heard something and chose to act. The Hunter unit hesitated. Its targeting systems recalculated rapidly, threat probabilities shifting. It had been designed to dominate isolated survivors, not confront an incoming force willing to ignore retreat doctrine. The executioner fired once more. The shot went wide. Then it turned and withdrew, heavy footsteps shaking the ground as it vanished into smoke. Jonah slumped to his knees beside Kalith, breath coming in ragged gasps. "Okay," he said between laughs and coughs, "that's officially the most illegal rescue I've ever been part of." Kalith watched the sky, something heavy and unfamiliar pressing against her chest plating. Hope. The dropships didn't land gently. They slammed down like fists, kicking up dirt and debris. Human soldiers spilled out immediately. No perfect formations, no pristine armor. Some wore patched gear. Some carried weapons that didn't match regulation. But every single one of them ran toward Jonah and Kalith without hesitation. A woman with a medic's insignia skidded to a halt beside them, eyes widening at Kalitha's size and condition. "Oh hell," she muttered. "You weren't exaggerating." Jonah grinned weakly. "Told you. Big friend. Needs help. Also maybe wants to kill us later. Hard to tell." Kalith managed a low, exhausted sound that might have been a laugh. The medic didn't hesitate. She began attaching stabilizers, human-made but adaptable, linking Kalitha's armor to portable generators. "Power flow stabilizing," the medic said. "She's tough. I'll give her that." Jonah sagged backward, finally letting himself rest. His armor shut down piece by piece until he was sitting there in nothing but scorched plating and stubbornness. A soldier crouched beside him. "You're going to get court-martialed," the man said. Jonah nodded. "Yeah." Another soldier leaned in. "Worth it." Jonah glanced at Kalith. She met his gaze, optic steady. "Worth it," he said. The dropships lifted again minutes later, hauling them out of the valley before the next wave of machines could arrive. As the battlefield shrank below them, Kalith felt the strange pull of distance, of surviving something she was never meant to. Inside the dropship, human medics worked around her, speaking in calm voices, adapting their tools with quiet creativity. They didn't treat her like an enemy. They didn't treat her like a trophy. They treated her like a wounded ally. Jonah sat nearby, helmet off now, dark circles under his eyes. He looked small without the armor, painfully human. Kalith studied him. "You broke your laws," she said. Jonah shrugged. "They'll forgive me. Or they won't." "You risked your life," she said. He smiled faintly. "That part's kind of the job." Kalitha's gaze hardened, not with anger, but with resolve. "My people will ask why you did this," she said. "They will suspect strategy. Manipulation." Jonah leaned back against the wall. "Let them. Humans get misunderstood a lot." She considered that. Then she spoke carefully, each word deliberate. "When this war ends," she said, "stories will be told. They will say humans are reckless. That you fight like chaos given shape." Jonah chuckled. "Sounds about right." "They will also say," Kalith continued, "that when the galaxy turned its back, humans did not." Jonah's smile faded. He looked down at his hands, stained with dirt and dried blood. "That's a nice story," he said quietly. "Hope it sticks." The dropship rocked as it entered friendly airspace. Outside, other ships formed up, alien vessels this time. Kalith recognized the markings immediately. Her people. They had returned. The tension in the cabin shifted instantly. Human soldiers stiffened, hands drifting closer to weapons, not out of fear, but readiness. Kalith raised her voice. "Stand down," she ordered. "They are under my protection." The alien escort ships matched speed with the human craft, holding position without aggression. A silent acknowledgement. Jonah looked at her, surprised. "That carry any weight?" She met his eyes. "It will." When they landed, the reception was complicated. Alien officers stared in disbelief at Kalith's damaged form being carried out by humans. Murmurs rippled through their ranks: shock, shame, confusion. A high-ranking alien commander stepped forward, gaze flicking between Jonah and Kalith. "You were marked as lost," the commander said. Kalith's voice carried across the landing zone. "I was," she replied. "And yet I stand here." Her optics locked onto Jonah. Because a human refused to obey. The silence that followed was heavy. Jonah shifted uncomfortably. Hi." The commander's gaze hardened. "This action violates multiple wartime accords." Kalith didn't look away. "So does abandoning the wounded." That landed like a blow. The commander said nothing for a long moment. Then, slowly, they inclined their head, not to Jonah, but to the human forces behind him. "This will be discussed," the commander said. Kalith knew what that meant. Everything had changed. In war rooms across the galaxy, analysts would replay sensor data. They would study the coin trick, the false heat signatures, the shared power tether, the refusal to retreat. They would ask the same question again and again. Why would a species risk everything for one fallen enemy? The answer terrified them. Because humans didn't measure victory the same way. Jonah was escorted away soon after, detained, technically, but not roughly. As he passed Kalith, he paused. "Hey," he said quietly. "If this turns into a diplomatic nightmare, sorry." Kalith's optics softened. "It will," she said. "And no, you are not sorry." He blinked. "I'm not." "No," she said. "You are proud." Jonah smiled. "Yeah," he admitted. "I think I am." As the doors closed behind him, Kalith felt the weight of what had begun. One rescue. One broken rule. One human choice. And a galaxy that would never see humanity the same way again. The war did not pause for speeches. It never did. But it listened. Across command stations, alien tacticians replayed the footage again and again. A single human soldier dragging a fallen enemy from the kill zone. Improvised traps. Shared power systems never meant to connect. A hunter unit forced to retreat, not by superior firepower, but by refusal to surrender. The data did not make sense. And that frightened them more than any weapon ever had. Kalith lay in a recovery chamber aboard a joint medical vessel, suspended in a lattice of light and stabilizing fields. Her armor had been removed piece by piece, revealing scars earned across decades of war. Human engineers and alien specialists worked side by side around her, arguing, adapting, improving. Human tools were crude. Alien tools were precise. Together, they worked better than either alone. Her paralysis was not gone, but it was changing. Slowly. Painfully. Systems reconnected where none should have. Human power regulators had forced her suit to reroute pathways alien engineers had never dared to touch. Too dangerous, they had said. Too unpredictable. Humans disagreed. Jonah sat in confinement 2 decks below, technically under arrest, officially under review, and unofficially becoming a legend. He stared at the bulkhead wall, hands resting on his knees. He had already told his story 6 times. Every detail logged. Every decision questioned. Why didn't you retreat? Why didn't you wait for orders? Why did you engage without authorization? Jonah had given the same answer every time. Because she was still alive. Some interrogators scoffed. Some went quiet. One simply stared at him like Jonah had spoken a language they'd never heard before. That language spread. Human channels lit up first, whispers among soldiers, medics, engineers. A nickname began to circulate. Rule breaker. It wasn't an insult. The Joint Council convened 3 days later. Kalith stood for the first time since the battlefield. Not easily. Not without help. But she stood. The chamber fell silent when she entered, supported by a human-built exoskeletal frame integrated directly into her alien physiology. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't beautiful. It worked. Representatives from dozens of species watched her take that step. Then another. She did not bow. She spoke. The galaxy believes humans are reckless, Kalith said, her voice steady and amplified across the chamber. That they are emotionally unstable. That they lack discipline. Murmurs rippled through the delegates. These assessments are correct, she continued. Silence. And you are wrong to see them as weakness. She turned slowly, optics sweeping the chamber. Humans do not fight to win efficiently, she said. They fight to save what they refuse to lose. A projection ignited in the center of the chamber. Jonah's footage. The coin hitting metal. The tether straining. The hunter unit retreating. Gasps echoed. Kalith faced the council again. My people abandoned me because logic demanded it, she said. The human did not save me because logic told him to. She paused. He saved me because he could not accept a universe where leaving me was acceptable. The human delegation sat rigid, unsure whether to feel proud or terrified. This war, Kalith said, has been fought with calculations and acceptable losses. She clenched her partially restored hand. Humans do not accept acceptable losses. The chamber erupted. Arguments flared. Fear. Accusations. Awe. Because the implication was clear. You could not predict humans. You could not pressure them with odds. You could not threaten them into retreat. They would break your rules. And they would do it together. Jonah was released that same day. No apology. No ceremony. Just a door opening and a guard stepping aside. Kalith waited for him in the hangar bay. He froze when he saw her standing there. Hey, he said carefully. You're vertical. She inclined her head slightly. Because of you. He scratched the back of his neck. About that, if this causes a diplomatic meltdown. It already has, she said. He winced. Sorry. She stepped closer. Her movements were still stiff, but controlled. Strong. My people have issued a new directive, she said. Any wounded human found on the battlefield is to be retrieved at all costs. Jonah stared at her. Even if they are enemies, he asked. Especially then, she replied. Something heavy settled in Jonah's chest. That's a big change. It is, she agreed. It is also irreversible. Outside the hangar bay, fleets gathered. Human ships. Alien ships. Mixed formations, uneven, imperfect, and terrifying. The enemy would learn soon enough. You could outgun humans. You could outnumber them. You could plan against them. But once a human decided you were worth saving, you were no longer fighting one soldier. You were fighting a species. Jonah looked up at the forming fleet, then back at Kalith. So, he said, half smiling, what happens now? Kalith's optics burned bright. Now, she said, we change how wars are won. The engines ignited. And across the galaxy, civilizations realized the truth far too late. Humanity was not dangerous because it was powerful. Humanity was dangerous because it refused to walk away. End.